things that are the hardest for leaders, and you know this really well, are not the things that are typically the obvious big business decisions. They're the complex human decisions.
Hello, and welcome to On Purpose. Today, I'm joined by author and CEO of YSC Consulting, Eric Pliner. Eric has written numerous articles on leadership that you may have seen in Harvard Business Review or in Fortune or in Forbes. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, Kristin. It's a pleasure to be here.
You loved going to plays. I know you still do. How does someone growing up in theater end up as CEO with a global, leadership consulting practice? Tell me a little bit about the progress there.
Part of my philosophy of leadership is that being a great leader requires integrating thinking from lots of different disciplines. I've been lucky enough to teach in law schools, to be a professor of education, to work in city government, certainly to be a playwright and to work with other artists, but to do all kinds of things that are seemingly unrelated. And yet in each one, there's something that informs what it means to be a leader and to work with other leaders on how they can improve their leadership. I remember understanding once when directing a play that everybody always wants to be in the picture. Everybody wants their voice to matter. They want to be a part of things that are important to them. The lessons from each thing that I've been lucky enough to do have translated neatly into learning about leadership.
I think some of our listeners today may be surprised to know that CEOs have coaches. Me being one of them, I'm very grateful to have you as my coach. As you meet with CEOs, what are the types of issues that they most want coaching on?
Things that are the hardest for leaders, and you know this really well, are not the things that are typically the obvious big business decisions. They're the complex human decisions. It's the stuff about how does what I feel personally relate to what my context expects of me, and how does that relate to what my role requires of me?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I value most about you working with me is your willingness to challenge me. And I think that is why CEOs hire leaders like you, is the ability to challenge. But what is that like for you?
It doesn't work for everybody. And so part of my job is to make sure before we start working together that we have compatible styles, that when you say to me, I want you to challenge me, that you really know what you're in for. You trust what my intentions are, and I trust your candor with me. That then makes it possible for me to say, I want to offer to you a different way of thinking about this, or may I share a different perspective? In the moment, even as we've worked together, it's really scary. And yet I know as a leader myself that often we are our own biggest impediments to our success. I know how defensive I get when people offer me feedback. And that means that every time I do it, I get a little bit of nervousness, but I also get a lot of excitement. That's part of what gets me out of bed in the morning in my work with my clients.
You're talking a lot about right now is how the role of a CEO has evolved and how the traits of inclusivity and empathy have become more important. Talk to me a little bit about how you see that.
Leadership is fundamentally an interpersonal activity. And that means that the role of the leader, whether it's the CEO or any leader at any level of a business, is always to think about and understand what does it take to engage people, to support people, to motivate people, to help people feel that they're a part of something important. Those things are not nice to have or add-ons. They are fundamental to the job of leading. You can't lead if you can't influence people, if you can't engage people, and you can't support people in coming together in service of your shared agenda and your desired impact.
So you're obviously the CEO of a large global company. You advise other CEOs, but as you look at your own personal life, what are the principles that guide you in your personal life?
One is that I can't do it alone. And that doesn't mean I don't try. Like many of us, I sort of like to think, I can handle all of this myself. But I will say that making sure that I'm connecting with people, that my connection and engagement is authentic and allows me to be vulnerable and humble is super important. If I can't do those things, then it's all just a performance, and that doesn't sustain itself very long. When it comes to how I lead in my total life, a big part of that is thinking about what do I want to model for my kids. And I have a 9-year-old daughter and 2 4-year-old sons. And I think a lot about the fact that I can't prepare the road for them, but I can prepare them for the road.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for your leadership and for joining us today for On Purpose. And thank you for listening. I hope to see you again next month for another episode of On Purpose.